little bit about myself. I work for I guess HP Enterprise now. I don't know. Next week it's going to be Micro Focus or something like that. So you get sold every few days to some new company. But anyway, outside of security work, I like drones. I brought a few some custom builds as well as one of my very first ones. And you can tell by the shape of the drone that this is pretty much what every person's first drone is going to look like. It's it's going to become pretty busted up pretty fast. But we'll talk about some of the different types of drones that are out there, as well as building versus buying. Everyone can hear. Everyone hear me okay? First of all, volume okay? A little louder. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if we have a sound system. Oh, there we go. Now we got some cues. Perfect. So for the talk, we're talking about UAVs. Last year I had some little drivable, little things, little cameras on them that I was driving around here and stuff like that, because when you think about UAVs, we think about just anything that's autonomous. Main days we're probably thinking about these things when you think of UAVs, but there's so many cool UAVs out there now that, and with quadrocopter, which is a type of controller, you can build literally anything. You can build cars, you can build boats, you can build multi-rotors, you can build almost anything. And those controllers are like $60 on Amazon for everything you need, including GPS, full functionality, mission planning, waypoints, everything. So there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do with them. But the main thing we look at nowadays with drones is automated versus piloted. And of course we're going to start with piloted drones. We're going to move to probably some type of automated thing once we get more familiar with it. But the problem with automated is a lot of times you got to take control of them, and you're going to have to bring this craft down or things of that nature. So you're going to have to know how to fly them. For that reason, I'm very against purchasing drones that do everything for you. A fantastic version of a drone that does everything for you is the DJI Phantom I have on the end over here. Literally, you can take it up, lay your hands off the stick, and it will stay exactly where you left it. It just does not move. It's fantastic. But if you don't know how to fly it and it freaks out or it loses GPS connectivity, things of that nature, then it's just going to come crashing down and your $1,000 drone becomes a pile of pieces. And it's not a good thing when that happens. Another thing, if you're considering this hobby, is you need to go ahead and make sure you have about a couple grand to throw away at the beginning, because you're going to throw away, drones. I had one just like this. My daughter remembers this, same model, and I had a GoPro Hero 3 strapped to the bottom, and I did something kind of stupid. It was snowy, white on the ground against a gray-white sky with a white drone, and took it up and was doing some great photography, and then the GPS transceiver failed on it, and it freaked out, and it decided it didn't want to come home, and it took off over the lake, and I never saw it ever again. And I was less concerned about the drone than I was about the actual GoPro, because, that's the way it is. And for that reason, one thing that I do now on every craft that I fly with a camera is on the actual SD card, I will put a little README file there saying, if you find this thing, it's probably a pile of matchsticks at this point anyway. But I will give you a reward for the card that has the footage on it, because I'd like to see what the heck daggum happened to this thing, and and kind of get an idea and get my video off. So besides writing on here, reward if found, and my phone number all over it, and of course nowadays for flying you have to put FAA stickers on them and stuff like that, which we'll talk about that. That card idea is a pretty cool thing to do. So at least you might have some shot. But to date, I've never had any drone recovered I've ever lost, ever. So just something to think about. So UAVs versus autonomous versus piloted. Uses for drones, well, we know the nefarious uses, military. We can read every day about somebody getting bombed in some country, which, that's another whole topic from a politics standpoint. But that's, a wide use of them. Surveying is becoming a big thing. Farming is great. There's actually drones that are being used. I mean, we've probably seen the thing going around lately, the thing about the cows with the backpack on its back to collect the cow farts. I don't know if anyone's seen that, but it's kind of been going around on the social networks. Drones are used to actually detect the methane levels over cattle farms now. So they actually will fly the drones up, detect the levels. They're also used to actually track cattle to see if a cow's moving, because if a cow's not moving, it's probably sick, or it's going to be sick or something. So they know they have to go tag a cow and make sure it's okay. Agricultural and surveying is also used for spraying crops. You can actually buy DJI 8 rotors now that actually lift payloads of dry crop sprays, and you can actually spray your crops from the drones. Of course, we're talking $30,000 and $40,000 craft, but just really cool applications from what's going on there. Search and rescue. I mean, all over the world, when you see earthquakes, things of that nature now, drones are usually employed to see those. We've seen the flooding happen in different areas of the United States. Drones are being brought in to actually help find people. We probably heard the story. If you haven't, there's a great story you can read about where a guy actually saw a person in a house with his drone, called the search and rescue. They went and fished the guy out of his house, and he was just doing it for fun. And just there's a person in the top of that house, and the water level's pretty high. He really doesn't have anywhere to go. So they actually rescued the guy. So really cool stuff there. Of course, videography is a big thing, and we can't go anywhere on the internet without seeing some type of drone video these days. And with the new DJI Mavic and the new GoPro, which is out, which are both backpackable, we're probably going to be seeing a lot more of that. Realty is a big area right now where drones are being used for photography. You really can't go and sell your house these days without having a nice drone video of your house. So a lot of video applications being used. IoT. We have to think about IoT with drones, but it's there and it's coming, and there's lots of applications for it. And then my favorite is hacking, which is really what this guy's for these days, is you strap a Raspberry Pi to the bottom, load Kali Linux on it, a nice 10 decibel gain antenna, land it, penetrate a wireless network, and we all know what goes down from there, so it's good times. So types of multi-rotors. There's tri-rotors, hex rotors, quad rotors, octa-rotors. She asked me a while back, when are we going to build an 8-rotor, Dad? And I was like, when I have money. Because just looking at frames for octa-rotors, you're looking at $1,000 just for a frame. It's been a while. It's probably been about 2 years ago. Because they're very expensive. And feasibly right now, I'd say your hex rotors are probably your best bang for the buck if you're wanting to build, especially from a kid standpoint. Fantastic, they're very stable, and if you get into a situation, depending on which controller you have, where you lose a motor, it will set itself into a spin where it will gradually descend to bring itself down, and you can possibly recover your craft. So good times there. The most common rotors we see, though, are quad rotors. And when you buy or configure a quad rotor, one of the things you have to think about is, do I want an actual X configuration or a plus configuration? I very rarely see plus configuration in quads unless it's a custom build. Almost everyone you see is a quad configuration. And if you've never dealt with quads at all, as far as flying them, playing with them, even the ones you buy as little toys, one thing that always happens is when I give one away to someone or to a kid for a birthday present or something, they bring it back to me and goes, hey, I broke a rotor and now it just flips over when I try to fly it. That's because people don't understand that if you look on the chart here, 1 is rotating counterclockwise, 2 is rotating counterclockwise, 3 is clockwise, and 4 is clockwise. So you have counter rotation on your rotors to allow it to steer, fly, do the thing that it does. So what they'll do is they'll put a counter rotating rotor on a standard clockwise rotation, and then it will just flip over because it can't actually fly. So when you're building, this is one thing you need to think about, whether I'm controlling this from a controller standpoint or I'm actually buying clockwise versus counterclockwise motors. Some motors will do it just by flipping the wires to the actual controller, and now it's counter-rotating. But depending on which build you buy, you may actually buy rotating versus counter-rotating, clockwise versus counterclockwise motors. So if you're thinking about building any type of multi-rotor, there's some things you're going to need. First thing is the frame. The frame on this one is the arms and the plates that everything is connected to. This frame kit, you can probably buy nowadays on eBay for $35-40 for a frame kit for this guy. They're fiberglass arms. If you notice, one is yellow, one is red. That's because at one time they were both black. And then I bought 2 red ones, and after breaking an arm, then I bought 2 yellow ones, and after breaking an arm, ended up with a red and a yellow one. So once again, no matter how much you fly these things, this is non-stabilized. There is no GPS on this thing. You have to fly this joker, and because of that, especially when you're first tuning it and dialing and everything, be prepared to replace lots of parts on it. So it's kind of the nature of the game. The next thing you're going to look at is something called an ESC, which is an electronic speed controller. You have to some way control the amount of voltage going to your motors to make them throttle up, throttle down, So that's going to be done through an ESC or electronic speed controller. That's these little blue things on this guy. You'll see them on this guy too. They're black. I just have them zip tied to the bottom instead of the top. But those are going to run you about $3 or $4 a piece. So we're not talking a whole lot of money really from a component standpoint. I mean, this guy here probably has nowadays, maybe $200 worth of parts in it. This one here probably has maybe about $350 worth of parts in it. So they've gotten a lot cheaper. If you visited my talk last year on this, prices have come down probably roughly 50% just from last year on what these things have cost. So it's really fantastic. Motors is our next thing we have to look at. I was just talking to someone earlier, and we were talking about how they wanted to lift something that was like 14 kilograms, which is a lot of daggum weight. But anytime we're building any type of multi-rotor, basically what you want to do, there's a simple formula. You want to get all the components and the item that you want to lift with your multi-rotor, double that from a weight standpoint, and then divide that by the number of rotors, and that's the amount of thrust necessary you're going to need to purchase for your motors. So if your motor says it can lift if you're wanting to say, we'll use a simple thing here, 12 kilograms, and you have a quad rotor, then you want to double that to 24 kilograms, which we're saying kilograms, you're not going to do anything that's that big. But and then divide that by 4, and then get a motor that's rated for that quarter of that entire number. And there's also calculators online that'll help you with that. It's basically doubling your thrust. Power distribution, well, we got to get power to all these components. This one here actually has a soldering board built into it. It's already pre-etched, so you can literally just solder your components directly to the board for that kit. It's like $40, $50. Your controller, there's lots of different controllers. We'll talk about them on the next slide. Telemetry. This guy here, for example, has telemetry built into the controller itself, but I have a separate 933 megahertz radio that will communicate to my laptop real time, up to 5 kilometers, that will feed live telemetry data to me. So if for some reason it did go down, it will actually, as long as it has battery power and it's not totally destroyed, it will continue feeding me that data, and I can possibly retrieve my aircraft. So that's a totally separate subsystem. And that whole transceiver costs like $30. So we're still talking really cheap components. And then your RxTX, your actual radio and your transceiver that you're going to buy, that has changed a lot since last year also. Last year everyone was buying Tyrannus and all these other types of things, whereas FlySky now just released a $59, $69 radio that's just fantastic. So we dropped the price by 50% and literally doubled the amount of cool stuff that's out there that it can do. This one, they're all going to be, they're all going to be these layered, lithium, batteries. And for that reason, you have to think about if you're going to be transporting these. They're all like those. For example, the Phantom right there, I just flew with it to Florida a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago. If you're flying with these, because these types of batteries, because they will explode, you can only fly with them in carry-on. Because since the check baggage is not pressurized like the standard compartment, they can expand and pop and do lots of nasty things. So the only time you can transport it on a plane at least is to carry it on with it. But LiPos is going to be your fundamental battery. This one's a 2200 milliamp battery. This is 14.8 volts. And the voltage is going to differ based on the type of craft you're going to build. So what you're going to do is you're going to buy a balance charger, and you can program the balance charger for whatever voltage that you're dealing with, and it'll charge the battery up. That also brings me to the component here. When you're building your batteries, this is a $2 component. It's basically an alarm sensor, and you can program it for voltage. Since this is a 14.8 volt battery, I can literally program it and say when you reach 12 volts, start beeping really, really loud. So I know I'm running out of battery and I can actually bring it down instead of it just crashing. And that's the reason I chose the braking slot thing too, because it seems like drones and braking goes kind of hand in hand. So controllers. I mentioned the quadricopter, that is also known as an APM. There's also a BeagleBone. All those are made by 3D Robotics, 3DR. Same company. They built the now defunct Solo drone. If you've ever seen the 3DR Solo, it was supposed to be their bulletproof, awesome drone, and it turned out to be an absolute piece of garbage. So basically, they pulled it off the market, but they still sell components, and they're fantastic. One of the great things about the APM quadricopter type controllers is they're fully open for the most part, and they interface with Mission Planner. So you can download the Mission Planner software, program your waypoints, flip your switch in your radio when you have it programmed, and it will fly where you want to fly, take off, and land itself based on how you have it programmed. So you don't even have to fly it. And like I said, those controller kits are somewhere around $70. That includes the GPS towers and everything. So they've really come down in price. Another thing too is the Phantoms are a really popular product, but if you try to fly near an airport, it's not going to let you take off because it's a restricted zone. So it's programmed via GPS data where it's allowed and not allowed to take off. Whereas with the quadricopter, because it's open, you can totally take off, fly it with an airplane engine, go to prison, all those types of things. You know, come with that, but it's weird. You know, with drones and alcohol tends to go together sometimes too. So you know, hey Bubba, watch this. You know, it's all these things. But so Naza controllers, that's probably the next popular controller, and that is made by DJI. If you're wanting to do video stuff, last year if you would have talked to me, I was like anti-DJI totally. I was like, you know, they restrict where I can fly, they do all this type of stuff, but with all the laws being passed by the FAA, I've kind of softened my stance on that, and I've purchased a couple of DJI products. If you're wanting to do video work in any way, form, or fashion, just go buy a DJI drone. They're absolutely fantastic, they're bulletproof, you cannot go wrong in any way, form, or fashion. They're just fantastic hardware. And their controllers, if you want to build, same situation, they're just bulletproof. You take that guy up, like I said, and you stick it, it's not going to move. You take your hand off the controller, it's going to stay exactly where you left it. I mean, it's just, the GPS, the telemetry is just rock solid. The gimbal is just butter smooth. I mean, you can just sit there and rock the thing, and the video is not going to move. It's just beautiful. Multi-Wiis. Multi-Wiis are great. Used to play with them a lot. This is a CC3D or a KK2. I can't remember which one's on here. KK2s are also great first controllers. They're very inexpensive because they actually have a little LCD panel on them, so you can program them right on the controller. Most of the other ones that you're going to see on the screen here, the APM, Nazas, Multi-Wiis, you're going to have to connect them to your computer and program them. The Nazas actually are going to interface nowadays with most DJI software on your tablet or your phone, and you do everything through your tablet or your phone. So pretty much all done there. So looking at our radios, receivers and transceivers. Last year I think I brought in a Turnigy radio as a big monster. FrostSky Tyrannus is another very popular. The big thing with both Turnigy and FrostSky Tyrannuses is that there is open firmware out there available for those. So if you don't like the stock firmware that's on them, people are hacking the snot out of these two controllers, and they're making them just so extendable it's not even funny. And this is a hacker conference, that's what we do. We make things do stuff that they're not supposed to do, and these are the top two controllers for that to happen. Then there's really, really expensive controllers. These controllers, the top two, are in the $150, $200 range. You can pay $1,000 for a radio easily. So, but that's changed a lot since last year. Like I said, the new FrostSky controller that just came out for $60. It's a 10-channel controller, and it's just awesome. And technology has come way up in the last year, and the cost has come way down. Barometric pressure sensors. I've got a couple little toy drones up here. These are kind of the same scenario where you really have to learn how to fly them. I mean, there's nothing automatic about these at all. But in my car, I've got one of these guys. It's a new version, and it has a barometric pressure sensor in it. So it actually will level and stay at the height that you leave it. From there, you're just going to be handling, you know, pitch and yaw, that type of scenario. But it will actually stay at the height based on the barometric pressure that it detects. And you know, those things are like $25. I mean, they're fantastic. And so once again, the technology has continued to come down. I mean, go up, and the cost is coming down. GPS. If you're wanting to do any type of waypoint programming, if you're wanting to do any type of live telemetry stuff, GPS is just, it's automatic. You want to make sure you include that in your craft. Most of the kits are going to come with this little tower you see on the quadritter here, the GPS will mount on top. It keeps falling off. The sticky tape came off a while back, and this thing hasn't been floating forever, so it's just there. But like I said, it comes with that $60, $70 kit. So types of payloads. I mentioned briefly the Raspberry Pis. I mean, you can literally strap anything if you can lift it to the bottom of these things. Cameras are going to be our most common things. Hacker payloads like our Raspberry Pis or any Arduinos or anything you want to play with. Fireworks, I can't necessarily say I endorse that, but it is really fun to strap a couple of the Roman candles to the water. Yes. We've seen the videos of airsoft guns. We've seen flamethrower videos. We've seen, I think some guy put a Glock 9mm on a drone, you know, which that's a real way to have the FAA come knock on your door.
They would have to find it first.
They would. That's one of those things, if you do it, don't video it and put it on YouTube. But anyway, but you know, the payload is basically your imagination, and these things are just an absolute blast, what you can do. Now, one of the most common payloads is going to be cameras, and that's probably what I'm going to focus on here. We're all familiar with GoPros. They're considered the de facto standard in the camera world. That's changing quite rapidly. If you've been keeping up with the drone stuff at all, you just had 2 new backpackable drones come out. You have the DJI Mavic, and you have the GoPro Karma. My opinions on that are quite varied. I think that if you're GoPro, you're going to release a drone that does not follow the individual, and you're supposed to be shooting sports, and you have no collision avoidance whatsoever on the aircraft, I think you kind of hurt yourself out of the gate. The DJI Mavic has all those features and uses the exact same sensor that the new GoPro Hero 5 is using, and it's on board on the unit. So I'll leave it up to you as far as use cases and how you want to buy them, but I see a DJI Mavic in my very near future. SJ cams, if you can't afford a GoPro, because they are hundreds of dollars and you want a cheap Chinese knockoff, SJ cams are awesome. You can usually get them for $60, $70. In the 120 range, you can get them to shoot 4K video at 30 frames a second, and they're almost right at GoPro quality. They're really good cameras. They come with waterproof housings. They're compatible with all the GoPro clippy things and clicky things and chest mounts, head mounts, mount them on your baby sister or whatever. You know, they're all there. Mobius. Mobius is a fantastic camera. If you're dealing with really small aircraft, Mobius is about the size, if you look at the 2 cameras in there next to the key fob, they're about the size of a key fob. And they're super lightweight, and they're almost right at GoPro quality at 1080p. They're fantastic little cameras. They're like $80. So our hacker payloads, we've talked about some of those. Raspbies, Beagle boards. You also have all these little, tiny little boards that seem to be hitting Kickstarter daily. Like that, a while back they had the $5 Linux that was the size of a postage chip. And all my friends like, oh dude, Ron, you're like playing with all this IoT stuff and all these drones. You're gonna love this. I was like, yeah. To make it work, you got to strap on this hat, solder this. Next thing you know, you have this thing that's like the size of a phone book. But yeah, I got this $5 Linux computer. So it's, be aware of what's out there. Think about weight. Weight is always a key factor in these things. But now probably one of the most important parts of the talk, and that's the legal. There is a lot of, hey Bubba, watch this stuff that has happened in the drone world. And because of that, we can't have nice things anymore. So you can go to the FAA.gov website. First of all, look at the model aircraft rules. These are the federal rules, and they're pretty simple for all model aircraft. That's whether you're flying a model plane, a model helicopter. These are considered models, anything of that nature. Read the rules, they're really simple, follow them. If you're in Tennessee, for example, up until about a year ago, you could not fly in any state park. It was illegal to fly. Now, that has changed. The rule is now, it is up to the park manager of whether you can fly in the park, which effectively says you still cannot fly in any Tennessee state park, because I've never met any park manager that will let me fly in the state park. We're part of a large scouting organization. Every year we have a big spring camping event. There's like 100 families there. I want to do some flower videos. Got with the park manager, they abjectly denied me. I'm like, look, you can have the park ranger stand there with me if you like. I'm not going to do anything funny. They're like, well, it's an expectation of privacy. I said, in a public park, expectation of privacy. You're killing me. you know, I can walk around with my camera and take pictures of people, but if I put my camera 10 feet off the ground, now the privacy has changed. I don't know. Just take me outside, beat me. I don't know what to do about this. But there's a lot of misconceptions. There's a lot of education that needs to happen in the drone world in regards to this. So the rules, we have really two sets of rules. We have hobbyist rules and we have commercial rules. The hobby rules are real simple. Fly it below 400 feet. Make sure there's nothing that you can run into, cars, specifically people. There's a horrible story about a little child that had its eye cut out by a drone, by a neighbor. The neighbor was flying it, lost control, went over, the rotor hit the child's eye, and now does not have an eye. Horrible, horrible story. So make sure you know where it's at, make sure you know how to control it. This guy here, which we'll talk about here a little bit from a cost standpoint, the Cheerson CX-20. Also the Phantom, and also this guy who's running Autocopter, they have virtual fencing programming built into them. So if you go into Mission Planner and the Autocopters, you can actually say, I want to build a virtual fence. You can't fly over 10 feet out from me and over, say, 20 feet up. And that way, if anything happens, you lose control, it will stop itself. It knows, hey, I've hit the virtual fence. So when you're first starting to fly, that's really important stuff to turn on and play with.
If it loses GPS.
If it loses GPS, no, you're right. It's useless at that point. So that's why you also want to make sure you flight check your unit before you do so. And also, personally, I will recalibrate my GPS before I fly every time. Especially with the DJI stuff, it's suggested. So as soon as before you fly it, you take it out, you do your walk around to the right counterclockwise, you flip it, you do your walk around, let the GPS recalibrate, and put it in. And also make sure there's no metal around you whatsoever. Can't do it next to your car. You can't do it next to the tower, that your neighbor has because he's a ham operator. Make sure you're away from anything that can interfere with the GPS. Snow, that's another story. The next big thing is we have to keep the aircraft within visual line of sight of all times. So you got to be able to see the craft. The Phantom the book says, I have not tested it, that I can fly it up to 5 kilometers away from it. And I can receive live video up to 3 kilometers away while I'm flying it. But that's definitely beyond line of sight. So we have not explored that, and because that's the rules. But so make sure you can see the aircraft. Remain well clear of and do not interfere with manned aircraft operations. Even after they put the 400-foot rule in, you heard pilots all the time saying, yeah, we're flying along and we've seen this drone pop up beside us. Well, that's not really safe from anybody. If they were to suck that into an engine or anything of that nature, it's really not going to do anything to plane. It's going to be bad news for your drone, though. But it's just not good stuff. So once again, it's why we can't have nice things, because people do crazy things like that. So make sure you don't get in anywhere near. Another good example of that is, I think it was about 2 years ago, I probably mentioned this in my last year's talk, that there was a big wildfire. They were setting up the big C-130s and all that types of stuff filled with fire retardant. They were dropping it on the forest fires, and 2 guys had drones up and they were videoing it. And they literally said the C-130s had to turn around and go back because the drones were in the area and they were afraid, of interference with their aircraft. They fined them $20,000 and divided it amongst both drone operators, so they got fined $10,000 each for flying in that area. So that was a very expensive lesson learned from those guys. Don't fly within 5 miles of an airport. I've already mentioned the DJI won't even let you. It's pre-programmed. When it takes off, it wants to have a connection to the internet, preferably, and it wants to check its firmware, and it wants to have all the good stuff there. If it detects its firmware is too old, it will not even let you take off. So you must upgrade my firmware, and most of that's to get new rules, to be honest. Don't fly near people or stadiums. I think that speaks for itself. Don't fly an aircraft that weighs more than 55 pounds. I don't think that's a problem for most people because, you're talking tens of thousands of dollars to get to anything that will touch that. Don't be careless or reckless. Boy, that's another one. You can be fined. Yes, you can. So, this brings us to the fun thing. As of last year, we discussed there was talk of drone registration. Now it's not talk, it's the law. So if your craft is over 0.55 pounds with the battery, you have to register your drone. If you get caught flying without it, I think it's a $150,000 fine, something like that. It's not pretty. My question is enforcement of that, but that's another whole talk. And once you register your drone, you're going to get a printable card with your FAA number on it, and they're going to say it has to be on your craft. So there's my FAA number on the craft. So anytime you fly, you have to have your FAA number on your craft, and you have to have your card on your person. So if you're ever stopped by someone who I guess has knowledge or is privy to dealing with that, they can deal with your FAA stuff. And once again, you have to follow all those prior rules with your FAA number there. If you want to register your craft, I got the URL at the bottom there. You'll go to federaldroneregistration.com, and that's where that's handled. So what brought those laws about? Recapping from last time we gave this, people were flying in restricted space. They were flying near aircraft. They were flying near airports. They were interfering with rescue and emergency operations. They were drinking way too much alcohol and just flying their drones. Overall, it's just bad stuff all the way around. So this brings me to our next thing. We have the state parks who say, hey, you can't fly in my state park. How do I get around them? Well, up until August of this year, you had to have a pilot's license. I'm starting to reach the point where I actually begin exploring that. I talked to my wife, and just to get your basic Cessna, basic pilot's license, you're probably going to be out about $15,000 to complete everything for licensing. $15,000. She looked at me and that "are you crazy" kind of look that I deserve to get. But that has changed. We now have the Part 107 exam. I grew up here in Nashville. I went to McGavick High School back in the 80s, and we had an aerospace class. It was fantastic. We actually looked at maps. We learned a lot of the terminology. Of course, I forgot most of it by my mid-20s, but it was a really cool class. Basically, all the stuff you would take in that class is pretty much what the Part 107 exam is. It's basic pilot stuff, really basic. And basically identifying things on a map, identifying markers, acronyms, understanding when they say, are you flying in a Class B, Class C zone? Those are actually broken out in so many feet from the ground, understanding what those are, because what you'll be doing is once you receive this certification, you'll be filling out a petition to the FAA saying, hey, I want to fly on a specific date for this reason. You'll file your form and they'll say, yeah, we're done. So if they say yeah, guess what? The state park can't do anything to you now because you have an FAA permit to do so. Because really, to be honest, all the parks are saying is that you can't take off in my park. If you could park on the side of the road and take off and fly over the park, they can't do anything to you. They're restricting where you can take off and where you can land. But once again, if you're flying line of sight and you're in a state park, there's probably going to be a bunch of trees and it's going to be difficult to do that. So at the end of the day, we've looked at Part 107, which is commercial. We've looked at our hobby rules. And we're going to look at building or buying. I've got 2 builds and 2 buys up here. There's advantages to both. If this is a hacker con, so a lot of us usually have some type of skills. We probably picked up a soldering iron once or twice. We probably know how to use a hot glue gun, a screwdriver, and that pretty much is all the qualifications you need to build your own drone. It's not rocket science. There's tons of YouTube tutorials out there. You can hit instructables.com. You can pick your controller, hit YouTube, and you're going to find some step-by-step on how to put together your drone. There's lots of good places to buy. Hobby King is one, even though I would say recently I've been burned by Hobby King. I'm not going into details. I'm still going to leave them there, but I would say proceed at your own risk. And make sure you use your credit cards you can charge back. Banggood.com is still my preferred go-to site. I have bought so much stuff from them and never had an issue. If I had a problem with a device, they sent me another one. They refunded my money, whatever needed to happen. Granted, you are ordering direct from China. It is coming probably over a boat because it takes you 2 weeks to a month to get it. It is free shipping, but you just be patient and you'll get your stuff. Local hobby stores. I'm all about local hobby stores. The problem is there's very few of them. If there is one in your area and you can actually just support a local business, please do so. And being able to walk in being like, dadgummit, I did this, it's still not working, and have someone be like, hey, you probably want to look at this, it's huge. RTF, read the manual and just, do what's supposed to be done. Retail. Buy versus build. So my suggestion for a buy at this point is still the same one from last year. It's a Cheerson CX20, and that is this guy here. It is basically a clone of the Phantom 2. It is running quadricopter. You can hook it to your computer, fully program it from your computer. Mission planner, waypoints, full GPS, accelerometer, all the stuff you want, the barometric pressure sensors. This one has been well flown. I've had this one for about 2.5 years, 3 years. And it's had the props swapped off probably maybe 20, 30 times. The landing skids, I just give up. I keep breaking them, I keep putting new ones on, I keep breaking them, keep putting new ones on. And then I started moving into these other craft, that are fiberglass and not plastic. And, things have gotten better for me. But regardless, the weak spot on this guy is the landing gear. It's very flimsy. So they make other landing gears out there that you can put on this thing, and I would suggest it. Beyond that, fantastic. Quad. If you have this thing, as of today, is $179 with the radio, ready to fly, out of the box, battery, everything direct from China. If you want to spend a little more money, then I would go with the Phantom 3 standard. And you can get those on the DJI site sometimes for around $450, and it's basically 1080p camera with a good quality DJI gimbal, and you can fly it up to about 500 feet. And it's a fantastic quad, and you get that rock solid DJI awesomeness. If you want to build yourself, what we talked about early on in the talk, we talked about some of the parts. Just really spec it out, see what you want to do, and maybe for a custom project, like you want to strap pies to it or whatever, just kind of figure it out, figure out what you want to do, spec it out, and there's lots of resources out there. But the big hot thing these days is FPV. We're just now starting to delve into it. I have a few craft coming. As of this morning, Banggood had a eSheen with the goggles and the radio ready to fly for around $200. So definitely the entry level price has came down quite a bit, and it's really fun. I got lots of friends that are doing it. I got a guy in Maine that's starting an actual FPV club. He's actually building tracks and arenas and courses, and having a lot of fun with it. The eSheen Tiny QX90 is probably one of the most, for micro FPV out there, probably one of the most popular because it's extremely hackable. You can go to Thingiverse if you have a 3D printer, print out your frames when you crash it, so you can just rebuild it, print out a new frame, your 3D printer. I mean, it's a very well-known platform in the community. So, and like this one comes with your cameras. You can pick your transceiver when you order it. If you want a Fry Sky, if you want a Tyrannus type of receiver, they'll let you pick from the most common types, and you're good to go. And for the most part, that concludes the talk. So now I will be opening this up for questions if anybody has any. They do. Those do not, but I have two in my car that are the exact same size as that do have cameras. Yes. You can't see what they see, it's just recording and then pulling it off the car.
Do you have any tips on how to make a flying bike?
A flying bike. Without ET being involved, I don't know. I mean, how big of a bike are we talking about here?
Well,
Yeah. There's a video online of a guy in the UK who built a flying bike. And he had lots of tools that I think your standard home is not going to have, including TIG welders, turbofan props the size of these tables, things of that nature. So I don't want to discourage you. Please build that bike. But as far as from a drone standpoint, I think it's a little bit outside of my standard tool set.
you discouraged me on what I want to build. You still haven't flying.
You think you're Da Vinci. Tell you what, have a drone, and in the hat, since you asked the question, you'll get a drone. You'll need 2 AAA batteries.
My daddy just got himself a new toy.
You'll need a couple of AAA batteries. It's charged via USB. On about a 20-30 minute charge, it'll fly for about 7 minutes. Those are an absolute blast. They fly no different than this guy or that guy. I mean, if you want to learn how to fly, they're the best way to go. And it comes with some extra props. You can go back to Banggood, which is where I ordered this from, and buy more if you need it.
Think about working on knowing the dog.
Dogs, hate them. They're fantastic.
About a week ago, ESPN had the drone race league. It just started. It's pretty fascinating. They will fly their drones around a stadium with boxes that they have to needle thread to. Plus, they go outside through the corridors. That's pretty phenomenal.
It is, and that's one of the things my friend's doing. That's one of the very first leagues. You're going to see leagues popping up everywhere. This is in its infancy, and it's going to be really cool. It really is. He's starting a whole club. You can find him on Facebook. When you go on Facebook, literally you can just search for groups. There's tons of them out there. They're really starting to form. I don't know what it is about Tennessee. We're just a little slow in getting some of that started up, and between work and scouts and everything else, it's not something I can dedicate time to starting. But I'd be happy to join one if someone has one put together.
Question about the chairs on CX20. I know with the DJIs, you can hook it up to your smartphone and you can watch and control it from them. Can you link the chairs, does it have a control, does it have a link to your smartphone?
It does not. So here's what you can do for this though. If you're wanting to track it, I mean, you're not going to get, what we call that's FPV, first person view. You're not going to get FPV for this. There's definitely some hack solutions, because another thing about this, because it's open and it's running in the, oh yeah, when you order this, there is the open source version. I want to make that statement clear. Only buy the open source version. They make GoPro interfaces for it, so you can actually get your GoPro through, but the main thing is this little 933 megahertz radio.
Yeah.
On the quadricopter board on this one, the headers have not been soldered, they're open. So basically, just take the wires from this, solder it on, and you can actually have a 933 megahertz telemetry. So while you're flying it on your laptop, you can have the receiver hook in and you can track it up to 5 kilometers.
That's because a lot of the controllers say you can fly 5 miles away, and if you can't see the drone, you need some way to know what the drone is seeing.
Right, so well, at least from before FPV got real popular, the other side of that was just knowing where it was at.
Yeah.
So, and that's what,
I suspect it's lost in the sky pretty
exactly,
fast.
exactly. So with the transceiver at least, in Mission Planner, you get a live GPS map if you're connected to the internet, and you can track it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's, I have that one set for like around 112 baud. So it's plenty fast enough to get the data. It's good for a good 5 kilometers, no problem. And like I said, you'll see the picture that I have there. Usually they ask me for the slide deck every year, so we'll give it to them, and wherever they put that, so you can download it. If not, you can just ask me, or I can give it to you. You'll see people just high glue it to the bottom and just solder it in, and then they have telemetry. So. Anything running quadricopter, I mean, it's huge.
Seems like every time I fly my drone, I end up breaking my GPS tower. Any advice for us, like, should I keep buying breakaway sticks?
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean, because because it's doing what it's supposed to do. I mean, it's breaking off, because if that doesn't break, something else is going to break. I mean, I'd rather break that tower than an arm. I mean, so, yeah, there's all kinds of fixes for that. So, yeah, the main thing is just depending on what your setup is. If you have a GPS and a separate magnetometer, if the magnetometer is not built into your controller, you just need to be careful that they are spaced out enough, because the magnetometer will actually interfere with the GPS. So I don't know what, it depends on your controller and your setup. Like this one, this is actually the magnetometer, not the GPS. The GPS is inside. The newer versions of this, the GPS is on top, the magnetometer is inside, and they have it spaced out. This is a much older version. Same here, the magnetometer is actually built into the controller on this one, and my GPS tower is all the way over here. So that's how that rolls. Good question. If there's no more questions, thanks for coming. Hopefully you enjoyed the talk, and